Hello everybody, it's Jrobi bringing you Game 10 in the World Chess Championships. Of course, World Chess Champion Anand is defending his title against Topalov, and in this game, Topalov has the white pieces, and he's been doing really good lately. The momentum has been shifting in his favor quite substantially. He was able to draw against Anand 2 times in a row when Anand had the white pieces, then he came back with the white pieces, and he was able to defeat Anand, and then Anand, of course, almost had the win in Game 9, but Topalov was able to manage to play to the draw, and here we are, Game 10, only 2 games remaining after this game, and the point total going into this game, of course, 4.5 points each. So basically, with the amount of games remaining, only one of these competitors has to score 1 win, and the rest draws, and they'll have the World Chess Championship of 2010. So let's just dive right into it here. So the d4 showdown in Sofia continues. Topalov pushes his pawn to d4, basically saying to Anand and his team, I'm bringing d4 at you again. I don't care how much you've been studying or how many of the lines you've been studying every single night of this World Chess Championship, but if there's an opening that I'm going to use to become the World Chess Champion, it's going to be Queen's Pawn to d4. So what does Anand do in response to this? Now, he's been playing a lot of Slav lines. Interestingly enough, Anand responds with the exact same line that he played in Game 1. Now, you got to remember from Game 1, Anand lost that game. So it's a very interesting choice that Anand has taken in this game, because you know that he does not want to lose this game, that's for sure. But he plays the exact same moves he played in Game 1, so we're into a Grunfeld line here. And in fact, there is no deviation up until move 10. Now, in move 10 from this position, Anand played knight up to a5, attacking the light square bishop. Topalov brought that bishop back, and from here, a series of moves led to quite an interesting position that Anand unfortunately lost. So knight to a5 was his move on move 10. In this game, however, he's elected for a more safe move in the position. He pushes his pawn up now to b6. Now, of course, that's strengthening his pawn formation there on his queen side. It's also vacating the b7 square, allowing him to develop his light square bishop, and it's basically a very solid move in the position. Because we know that Anand is not going to stretch for the attack in this game, because if he stretches too far, creates too many weaknesses along the way, Topalov the Tiger is going to pounce all over him, and Anand's chance at defending his World Chess Championship is going to be pretty much gone. So we're expecting a very safe game from Anand today. In fact, if he ever has the opportunity to trade down material, if it's if it's a safe way to do it, we're definitely going to see that today for sure, no doubt about that. So from here, after seeing pawn to b6, Topalov continues now queen up to d2. So he's supporting that dark square bishop along that nice dark square diagonal. You remember back from Game 1, he was able to get his bishop onto h6 and trade off the dark square bishops. But from here, play continues now, and then plays bishop to b7. So very safe move here, just continuing on with the development, not trying to mix things up too much, although we are starting to get a little bit of pressure building up here on the d4 square. So that is going to explode at some point, and it's going to be interesting to see what it looks like when the dust settles. So from here now, Topalov continues rook over to c1, so he's bringing his rook over to the c file, of course supporting the pawn on c3. Things are eventually going to open up, so he wants his rook in a more active position, and from here now, Anand swings his rook over to c8, so virtually the same kind of thinking behind that move. Topalov continues now rook over to d1, so he's supporting the queen, getting ready for the incoming barrage here on the d4 square, and Anand now captures into the center, so he takes a pawn on d4. Of course, he's attacking the dark square bishop in the process, so from here, Topalov recaptures now with the pawn on d4, so we have the d pawn connected now with the e pawn. Now from here, Anand plays queen up now to d6. This connects his rooks, also gives him the option of swinging his f rook over now to d8, so just a very solid, safe move in the position. But from here, Topalov continues by thrusting his d pawn up now to d5, so he's attacking the knight. Of course, Topalov does want to open things up. He's a very aggressive attacking style player, and he knows if he can get this win today with the white pieces, his chances of winning the World Chess Championship this year are pretty much sealed in. So he's definitely going to be trying to bring the attack to Anand, but that being said, he's not going to stretch too much, because just like Anand, if Topalov were to lose today, his chances of winning the World Chess Championship are pretty much over. So facing this position, Anand replies knight over to a5, so the knight ends up getting to a5 just like it did on in Game 1. Now, of course, this is attacking the light square bishop here on c4, and it's also opening up access for Anand's c-rook here to attack the light square bishop as well. So Topalov has 2 attackers now on that light square bishop. He's got to get it out of dodge, so he elects to place it now onto b5. So it maintains a pretty active position for the bishop in this position. From here now, Anand trades off the rook on the c file. Topalov recaptures, and now Anand plays his rook over to c8. So we can see that Anand is really trying to trade the material down while he still has his pawn structures intact, and it's going to give him a good position to fight for the draw, while at the same time, of course, maintaining an active enough position so if Topalov makes a mistake, Anand can jump all over it. So from from this position now, Topalov pushes his pawn up to h3. Now, it doesn't immediately give him an escape square for his king. Of course, we have the queen sitting on d6, bearing down on the h2 square, but in the future, he can make use of that square for any kind of back row mating ideas that Anand might have. So from here now, Anand continues to trade down the material, so he captures the rook on c1, Topalov recaptures, and now Anand thrusts his e-pawn forward, so he wants to start attacking into the central pawn structure that Topalov currently has. And from here, Topalov responds by jumping his knight up now to f4, so of course that's lending another defender to the d5 square. Anand does capture that pawn, Topalov recaptures with the knight, and now Anand pushes his pawn on the f file down now to f5, so he's attacking that pawn on e4. Now, of course, that pawn is the defender of that knight, so Topalov has to do something about this, so he pushes his pawn up to f3 to give that pawn another defender. Anand captures, Topalov recaptures, but now Topalov has an isolated e-pawn, so Anand can start to target that and try to make that a weak point in Topalov's position. From here now, play continues. The queen comes down to e5, so it is attacking that weak pawn. Topalov responds by bringing the bishop back now to d3 to defend that pawn, so Topalov is kind of getting into more of a defensive position here, defending that weak pawn here on e4. Anand continues by jumping his knight up now to c6. Now, of course, this is threatening the knight coming down to b4, so Topalov responds by pushing his light square bishop up now to b6. So that's attacking Anand's light square bishop on b7, which is the only defender currently of that knight on c6. But Anand doesn't have to worry about that light square bishop right away because he has a really nice move in the position. He jumps his knight down now to d4. Of course, this is threatening hitting the e2 square, which would fork the queen and the king. So Topalov has to do something about this in the position. From here, Topalov plays his queen up now to c4, so that's defending the light square bishop. It's also attacking the knight sitting on d4. And from here, Anand plays bishop takes knight now on d5. So it's attacking the queen. Topalov takes that bishop off the table, and Anand recaptures with his queen, and Topalov recaptures with the pawn now. So he has an isolated pawn on d5. So from here now, Anand continues by playing his bishop up now to e5. So it's still defending the knight perched here on d4, but it's also taking away the d6 square away from Topalov's pawn here on d5. And Topalov responds by bringing his king a little bit closer to the action, plays his king up to f2, and Anand responds in kind, develops his king now to f7, and from here Topalov puts his bishop on a more active square on g5. So of course this is giving the bishop some options in the position, and it's a lot more active than when it was sitting here on e3. And another side benefit of having the bishop placed on g5 is of course the king can no longer get closer to this passed pawn here on d5 because the pawn is taking away the e6 square, and of course this well-placed bishop is taking away the e7 square. So if the king wants to come down there, it's either going to have to trade off the dark square bishop or go the long way around. So definitely a good move from Topalov in the position. From here, Anand replies now by jumping his knight now to f5. And this knight has a plethora of options in terms of jump points, a lot of which are very close to white's pieces. So Topalov doesn't want to have that knight sitting there. So he thrusts his pawn up now to g4, attacking the knight, and Anand peels that knight off now to d6. Now this is temporarily at least blocking the d-pawn from advancing. Of course, the bishop is still sitting on e5, so it wasn't much of a threat, but it is blockaded nonetheless. So from here, Topalov continues by bringing his king closer, which is a luxury that Anand can't quite do in this position, not yet anyway. So Topalov does have that small benefit in the position, and Anand now responds by bringing his knight up now to e8. So this is of course eyeballing up the c7 square, which would fork the light square bishop and the pawn sitting on d5. So in response to this, Topalov brings his bishop back to c1. Anand does hit that c7 square, so he is forking those two pieces, but Topalov places bishop now to d3, and Anand continues bishop up now to d6. Now let's just go back there one move. You might be asking yourself, well, why doesn't Anand just come in and snag up that pawn? Well, unfortunately, it leads to a really horrible position for black. Let's just take a look at it. So the knight comes in, snags up that pawn. Now Topalov has a nice little move here, just slides his bishop up to c4. So that was one of the reasons why he placed the bishop on d3, just in case Anand did capture that pawn and make this mistake, because now that knight is pinned to the king, it can't move right away, and the king can come closer, but it's too late because white comes in with the king now on e4, and this knight will fall, and there's nothing that black's going to be able to do about it because it'll be in check. King will have to move off, can't recapture, and of course the game would just be in white's sole possession at that point. So let's go back to this position here. So Topalov brought his bishop down to d3, and of course Anand didn't take that pawn, didn't fall for that little trap there, and instead he played his bishop up now to d6. So once again, this pawn is prevented from accessing the position further, getting closer to the promotion square. And from here, Topalov continues by bringing his king really close now to the center of the board. He's on one of the 4 key central squares. He's also defending his d5 pawn now with with his king, so that pawn isn't going anywhere anytime soon. So from here now, Anand plays pawn up now to b5. So of course the knight's protecting this, even though the bishop is scoping out the b5 square. And Topalov responds now by bringing his king now to d4, which is a pretty good square for the king, because if this b pawn ever tries to advance, the king can penetrate here on c4 and be in a good attacking position. So from here, Anand continues by pushing his a pawn forward to a6. So he's defending the pawn now on b5, and Topalov plays his bishop back to e2. From here, Anand plays his king over to e7. So he's bringing his king closer to the center of the board. Topalov responds by placing that bishop again on g5. So he's putting the king in check. King peels off now to d7. So the king is definitely on a better square. It's surely a lot better than the f7 square. So from here, Topalov continues. He brings his bishop back now to d2. I just want to take a quick moment and stop and take a look at the position so far. It's a very even position because, of course, Topalov has his dark square bishop. He still has his light square bishop, but Anand has done a really good job at building kind of what they call a fortress in the position. In other words, that light square bishop of Topalov's on e2 can't really penetrate anywhere into the position to try to attack the a pawn or the h pawn from the back. So of course this light square bishop isn't really accomplishing a great deal in the position. Now of course it can be used to defend the pawn on d5, but in terms of an attacking piece, there's definitely nothing there. The only really active bishop that Topalov has, of course, is his dark square bishop, but all of Anand's pawns, of course, are on light squares. So very much an equal position. Now of course Anand would really like to capture that pawn on d5, but it's not easy, especially with the king in such close proximity of Topalov's to defend it. So definitely a very equal position so far currently in the game, which of course is in Anand's favor. He definitely wants to draw this game. So from here, Anand continues. He plays his bishop over to g3. Topalov responds by pushing his pawn up now to g5, and Anand from this position plays bishop check here on f2. So he checks the king. Topalov plays his king over now to e5, still defending that pawn. Anand hits check again, and Topalov places his king now on e4. So as you can see here, it's not easy for Anand to make use of his knight sitting on c7 that's eyeballing up that pawn on d5, because that king of Topalov's you cannot be moved from this position. Of course, Anand does not have a light square bishop to contribute to the attack. So it's definitely an even position, even though Anand does have some firepower in the area. That pawn on d5 is pretty solid. So from here, play continues. Anand tries knight over to e8. So of course this is threatening hitting the check here from the knight swinging to d6, and Topalov responds by hitting the check. So he's hit the check now with his light square bishop, and Anand peels the king off now to e7, and from here Topalov snugs his light square bishop here onto e6. So we have another defender to the pawn on d5. So that is a very solid pawn in the position. Now of course Anand has to consider moves like bishop to g8, attacking his pawns from the rear. So he plays his knight up, hits a check. Topalov moves the king off now, attacking the dark square bishop. King doesn't have to defend that pawn anymore. And from here, Anand jumps his knight now to c4. So he's basically saying, hey Topes, let's trade some material down. Let's get some of these pieces off the board. Of course Topalov doesn't want to do that, though. He still wants to play for the win, so he wants to maintain his material. So he swings his bishop back now to c1. So that's taking away a lot of jump points for Anand's knight there. Of course Topalov is still attacking the bishop here on g3. So Anand in return has to play his bishop back. He places it on d6, and from here Topalov brings his king once again to the center of the board and plays king to e4. Now I want to go back one move. You might have wondered, well, can Topalov at this point try to attack that h7 pawn by sliding his bishop to g8? Unfortunately, it doesn't work out. Even though Topalov can threaten to do that at some point in the game, the problem with doing that is the black king, and I'll show you why. So for example, if the bishop comes into g8, so he's attacking the pawn on h7, all the king has to do is move to f8. When the bishop takes a pawn on h7, because it is under attack, the king slides in here to g7, bishop takes a pawn on g6, and the king just snags that bishop up. So you actually drop a pawn in the position by doing that. So that's why Topalov didn't consider doing that in the position. Now that bishop to g8 move might come in the future, depending on where the black king is, but at least for the short term, it's definitely not an option. So from here, instead, of course, Topalov played his king up now to e4. So once again, Topalov's king is centralized, contributing to the defense of the d5 pawn, ready to move to whichever side of the board that king needs to be on. So from here now, Anand pushes his pawn up now to a5. So we have the a and b pawns starting to come down now, and from here Topalov brings his light square bishop back now to g4, and Anand thrusts his bishop down to a3. And this is very much a drawing move because Topalov doesn't have much of a decision to make here. He cannot leave that dark square bishop there, especially with the knight perched on c4, and allow those pawns to come down. So Topalov has to liquidate more material. So we see some more firepower come off the table here, and from here now Topalov brings his king up now to e5. Anand hits a check now. King goes back now to d4, so Topalov tries to keep that king centralized, and Anand snugs his king now onto d6, so he's attacking the pawn on d5, so Topalov has to worry about the defense of that. So Topalov swings his light square bishop now to e2, so he's attacking the knight, and Anand can't let the knight fall there, because then once the pawn recaptures, Topalov just wins the pawn on c4, so he diverts his knight over to a3, from which Topalov pushes his pawn up now to h4, and from here now Anand hits a check, so the king is in check, has to do something, still has to defend that pawn, but instead of worrying about the defense of the pawn, Topalov attacks the knight now on c3, so of course Anand can't capture the pawn in this position. So Anand places his knight now onto b4, of course this is attacking the pawn again. Topalov now takes the pawn on b5, he doesn't have much of an option, because this pawn on d5 is going to fall, but before he takes that, Anand captures the pawn on a2 with check. Topalov plays his king over now to b3, and now Anand plays his knight back up now to b4, so the pawn is defending that. From this position, Topalov brings his light square bishop to e2, and now Anand takes that pawn now on d5. And you might be asking yourself, well, you know, Anand's up a pawn now, can he play for the win? But unfortunately he can't. It's a drawn position, because Topalov just pushes his pawn up now to h5. Doesn't really matter if Anand captures or not. It's not going to change the outcome whatsoever. Anand doesn't capture right away, though. He just swings his knight down to f4. Of course, this is attacking the light square bishop, but Topalov can ignore that. He just captures the pawn, because if Anand wants to waste a move capturing the bishop, Topalov's going to be able to promote the pawn. So instead, Anand has to take that pawn back, and from here now the light square bishop comes to c4, and it's actually in this position that the game ends in a draw. And the general gist is that the a pawn is going to fall. White's going to be able to capture that. Black, of course, is going to be able to capture the g5 pawn, and you know, all White has to do is sacrifice the bishop to capture the pawn as Black tries to promote it. And of course, when you have a king and a knight versus a king, it's a drawn position anyway. So there you have it. Game 10 ends in a draw. So both players now 5 points. So we're still in the same position. We got 2 games left, but one of these players can win 1 game and draw 1 game and come away with the World Chess Championships. We'll have to see what happens. So take care. Hope you enjoy the video, and we'll see you on Sunday for Game 11.